point is don't live broadcast something on the internet when everyone's at lunch browsing the internet.
Yeah. So we're live now. Could you unmute it and then we can check the sound?
Okay.
Hey folks, we should be checking the sound. Hopefully you're able to hear us. Actually, I can't see. Test. So you should be able to hear me now. Is it Zarino? You should be able to hear me. Oh, wonderful. Thanks very much. Thank you. You've been really helpful just to help me set this up. I really appreciate that. So now that I know it's working and we've got a friendly face in the YouTube chat, I'm just going to go and herd some sheep and go and get some people from the rest of the teams to come and join us. So we'll be starting shortly, and I'll see you soon.
I used to feel like I was quite tan, and I really, like as I got older, I just got more and more good. Should I go talk for the next one? See you in the tan.
And by that stage, I'll just be white.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to wear my white shirt. And we'll see who's tan Have you done some? We're not tweeting.
Encourage people to win.
Yeah.
Very one to go.
Yes, you are very wanting.
All right. We're still just gathering some people, so aiming to start in the next minute or two. Thanks for your patience.
I saw people like run out of pink clothes. So like a little bit of that. Someone's got to sit at the front, people. Go at the front, lads, to make the twit.
Well, at my time, I could make it really short.
All right. People are gathering. Let me show you people that are gathering. So, people, more friendly people. There we go. I've also just terribly destroyed the camera. Ah, I'll not do that again. And also, how does that look in place? Okay, I'm not going to do that again. That was too exciting.
The camera is working.
Yeah, the camera's working. Well, it's a different setup, right?
Hi. I did have one.
Yeah, I literally just moved down all
My background is
I mean,
people can't see.
All right, how are we doing?
Richard,
Yes.
James is suggesting you put the screen on.
No. It's looked like that for me, but they see it right.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. Wonderful. Hey, Clay, how many people have we got? Until, I think 3.
Yes. 2.
Yeah. It's 1 o'clock. It's 1:02. No, 2 minutes past 1. So let's make a start. Hello. That was easy. So welcome to a joint showcase between the local digital collaboration unit and the digital land team. We're joint here today because showing our work is important and getting feedback on it. But also we think that a lot of our users are very similar, audiences. And so because we're streaming this online and gathering together, we're hopefully trying to get lots of interested people coming and seeing the work that we're doing and our thinking so that you can know about it. So we have a short agenda. It's split into 2. I'm going to start with a welcome and intro tick. I'm going to run through a quick through the agenda and some show and tell tips. So if you're speaking today, come and stand here. It should be fairly comfortable to stand here and kind of show the thing. We've got mouse and keyboard to kind of drive everything. You've also got your speaker notes in this window, so you can kind of like, if you need those, you've got those there. This here. Becca's going to be in the back. She's got some countdown timers just to help keep us on track, and coordinators. Nobody likes doing that job, so she's not being rude.
Take lanyards off. Yeah.
Yes. Take your lanyard off when you're on stream as well. That's usually a good thing. What else? The other thing is if you do get asked questions at the end, that's a good thing. We'll try and keep them short. And if we need to take discussions to the afterwards, then it's part of my job, part of Rebecca's job to do that. Also on Slack. But if you get asked a question, Rebecca's going to hold up a sign that looks like, looks like this. Yes, it will say, repeat the question. That is because we have people on our Hangout, and we want to make sure that we have a really good experience for them. So if you get asked a question from the back of the room, before you answer it, repeat what was asked of you so that it's really clear what it is that you're saying and what it is that you're answering when you've got a thank you slide, any questions behind you and no extra context. All right. So that's enough about the show and tell tips, I think. So yeah, we're going to start off with the local digital collaboration unit. Linda's going to start us off talking about our Q4 ambition. We're going to talk about the user journey mapping work that we've done. talking about our GDS Academy training, the local digital fund sponsors projects, kind of give you a sense of where they are and what we're learning from them already. The work that we're doing on a content audit of our website, and some stuff around a network discovery workshop we're doing with some chief digital officers. Then we're going to hand over to our digital land friends, who are also going to go over their vision, the projects that they're working on, update on developer contributions, the designing data standards, the work kicking off the local plans project, the discovery update on planning permissions project, and yeah, that's it. So let's start. I think this is Linda. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So this is the first of our sprint showcases for this quarter. So we thought we should share what the quarter plan is from the point of view of our team. It's basically broken into 12 missions. Last quarter we had 17 and half the size team. 12 still feels quite massive, but they're varying sizes. So we've got 3 really big ones, and we'll talk you through them at a high level. I have 2.5 minutes left. Just to contextualize them though, we wanted to remind everyone, especially those that are online, that we have 5 kind of big broad goals for the unit, for our for our central government role in supporting local authorities and fixing the plumbing. So the first one is obviously to drive global almost understanding of the benefits of and buy into the local digital declaration. So the local digital declaration is our common aspiration, and it's really important. We've learned over many years that lacking a common kind of semantics even for describing where we're shooting has led to people feeling more fragmented than maybe they otherwise would be. So that's our guiding light, and we want everyone to sign up. We've already got 145 signatories, which is phenomenal. The next one is the spaghetti, which is number 3, confusingly. Ultimately, we're trying to drive interoperability among all the different kind of tech providers that support local services. We want local services to join up better, be more standards-based. The top right corner is our way of saying we want to figure out the wiki methodologies for achieving this. So we're not going to do everything ourselves. We're a teensy team, relatively speaking. We know that other people are best placed to lead on things. So we're trying to figure out what the wiki way of fixing the plumbing is. And we're using our projects to learn about that. And relatedly, we want to develop a common language for reuse. So we hypothesize that it will be much easier to adopt more standard reusable components if if we have a more consistent way of documenting, be they guides. GDS have done awesome work on this with their design system. So we want to try and figure out how to do more of that for local specific services, especially end-to-end local services where they're hundreds of iterations of the same thing. GDS have kind of different scope in that respect. And then finally, it's really important that we can help tell the story in the way people like hearing stories, which is value for money. So we believe that there's a real cost benefit to working in a more standard way, using standards-based components, reusing things that are designed really well in one place, trying to figure out how you can drag and drop. It's not straightforward, but we know that utopia looks like interoperability. So these are the steps in our thinking to get there. So for this quarter, this is Rich will talk a lot more about this next week, but this is our quarterly roadmap, and it outlines there's a row for each mission, and it will ultimately track the big milestones. So the things that we want to hit to get to the end of the quarter. We're not confident in our 5-year roadmap for fixing the plumbing, but we think we can kind of be somewhat precise about what we could achieve in a quarter. And the highlights. This is the last of my bit. Okay. The highlights are. We funded 16 projects through the fund, and this is our major learning tool to get us to point us at those big, ambitious kind of ocean boiling missions. So one is we want to track them to identify where there's really high value to the sector in one or some of them. We want to help them all tell a benefit story, because even if one of these projects doesn't proceed as they previously imagined, there's an amazing benefits case to be told there, because they've saved us a lot of money in not plowing hundreds of thousands into something that wouldn't have worked, and they're going to help us to understand that. They're going to teach us, they're already teaching us about how they're collaborating and how you can build a thing that might be reusable across multiple authorities. Hopefully they're going to create tools that will help get away from this spaghetti situation. Spaghetti is a metaphor that has previously been used to describe the state of local government IT. Maybe not everyone gets that, but basically it's very confusing. Things don't join up. It would be nicer if it was nice and clean. And we're also going to try to learn about how these 16 projects are documenting things so that we can start to not, assume that we know a good way to document things for local services. We want to learn from them, share good practice around, and by the end of the quarter have a very first sense of how we might, document our common things. Is that time? And the other things are, you're going to hear more about pipeline. We've got 4 roadshows and GDS Academy training. The thing I wanted to say, how am I really on time? Do I need to stop here? I've waffled too much.
It's all right. Everyone's going to talk about these things later.
Grand. They're the highlights. If you want to know more about our roadshow, our roadmap, we are going to, you can talk, we can show you through the wall and we'll publish it. And I'll leave a bit about Teams. Thank you.
Nice.
Hi everyone, I'm Egla, and we'll cover off 2 things today. One of them is the declaration signatory skills offer. So if anyone ever says, why should we sign the declaration? This is one of the things you can point them to and say, well, you'll get some free training. So just like as a recap, every council that signs the local digital declaration, they get 4 credits that they can spend on GDS Academy courses that we're kind of like delivering for them. So the things that we did in the last few days is we figured out how to start offering those courses to council. So what happened was that we couldn't find a way to kind of like release those courses to the councils, because if we release it openly, then everyone would start booking them off, and then people would start objecting to it and that kind of stuff. So what we did, we sent off an email using Goviki Notify to all the people that initiated declaration signing, and so far it works really well. But also, if let's say you work in a council but you don't know who initiated the declaration signing, we created a form on our website. So shout out to Ben, who really helped out with this. That people can fill out the form, and then automatically on our website generates an email to the person who initiated the declaration signing, and then he or she can agree on how the 4 credits will get distributed in the council. So what we're finding so far is we had a couple of responses. We contacted all 144, now 145 signatories. We had actually 18 or 19 people come back to us. And the most popular course is Agile for Teams. It's very much unsurprisingly most popular one, because this is the only course that offers up to 15 places. All the others are like 1 person per course, so value for money. And the next most popular course is working level courses. So what we're finding is that product manager course is really very popular, followed by the delivery manager. And actually no one so far expressed an interest in going on business analyst or user research or service designer course. So what we're doing about this, so these courses, when we came to kind of like defining the offering, it was based on just some initial research and consultation with GDS Academy, and we actually didn't know what was going to be most popular. So what we're going to do next is we're actually going to refine the course offer to meet the demand, so putting up more Agile for Teams courses and that kind of stuff. But also we're going to make sure that the course content meets council expectations and council needs. So we're going to do that through feedback surveys and feedback gathering from people who actually go on the course. And the next thing I'm going to cover, so just like a really, really brief update on the 16 projects that Linda mentioned that we're funding. So all the councils, by now, they have received their funding money. There were some hiccups on the way, but Richard sorted it all out for us. Thanks, Richard. And also, pretty much everyone have completed their procurement, and some of them procured through digital marketplace, which was primarily a very good experience for them. So all the projects are underway. For all the project councils, we also offered free Agile for Teams training for the kind of like project team. And 7 of them have pretty much done it all. Some of them are doing it right now as I speak, and all the others are already scheduled in. There's actually 2 projects that decided to do a joint session, which is really good, saves public money. But also we have, what I noticed, if there's anything that they took all the projects from our kickoff session is working in the open, and it's really nice to see that they've started publishing their blogs. So Sunderland Council, they actually published their very first blog post, and they're really excited and nervous about it, but it's really sweet to see. In comparison to, there's another project about chatbots in AI that just been pushing blog posts every week. But it's all there. People can go and look at them and read them. But also show and tells. We've got some invites to some show and tells that people are going to be doing exactly what we're doing right now. So it's really nice to see, even if we can't be there in person. Also public Trellos. During the kickoff session, we provided councils with some introductory Trellos that they can start using as their project teams, and they really have been using them. So it's really good to see them embracing Trellos. Slack channels and workspaces. So some councils have already, like taxi licensing, they created their Slack channel. And there's also a workspace in Local Gov Digital. So it's all kicking off a little bit. People are starting to embrace the tools that we use as well. Twitter's been like one of the best things ever. So you can see councils like tagging hashtag local digital fund, hashtag fix the plumbing. Some of them created their own hashtags. My favorite one is Small and Mighty by Northeast Lincolnshire Service Design Team. Absolutely adorable. There's Open Community one and the others. Also week notes. So one of the projects that Ben is leading on is the pipeline project. And as you can see, there's all the FOI projects that we're sponsoring have already posted it on the pipeline and started adding their week notes. So that's another way how they're currently sharing progress. And what's next for us? So Corinne will talk to you about this later on, but what we're going to do is gather all of this information and add links to it from the project pages that are going to be on Local Gov Digital. And I'm right on time. Thank you.
Great. I've forgotten who's next. Next is Sam.
Hello, I'm Sam. I'm in the collaboration team as well. I work with Egley. I'm massively underprepared, so just prepare for some waffle. I'm going to talk you through some of the thinking I've been doing around how we track what a good project looks like and what we're looking for. So I'm going to show you some paper because this is what my brain looks like. So I'm currently working with 3 different projects. I don't know if the two. Is that all right? My brain works in a certain way. So what I was trying to do is create a canvas by which we can think about the themes that we're interested in when we're looking at the project, so that we can gauge how well we think they're performing. And it's not about whether they're going to produce something successful. It's whether they're going to whether a project is going to go forward and be successful, but whether what they're producing will have some reuse and revalue. So I basically split it up into different sections, and this is everything I know about the project. Pink things are supposed to be things I definitely know, green things I don't know yet, or things I'm worried about, and then I ran out Postmates. So these are all just other bits and pieces. And I did this, I mapped all of my 3 projects in the same way with everything I know about them, so that when I had those discussions with the projects, I could come back to it and say, what am I missing? What don't I know? I've taken this. I can put it down now.
Okay.
Thank you. So just go to the next
Yep,
one.
that's right. And then one more will take you to.
Oh, hang on. Yeah. So I took that out and I put it into a spreadsheet to try and think about how we translate this stuff into stuff we can measure. And it's by no means there yet. It's really early thinking, but it's basically taking what those themes are, what things we could potentially measure, and what it might tell us or what it might not tell us, so that we have a kind of common understanding of where important stuff is. And this is at a really early stage because obviously there's me and Egley and Adam and Matt who are going to be working with us a little bit. It's for discussion to see whether it translates to all the different types of projects that we're managing or whether it doesn't. Another thing that we've also been doing is we've been keeping, again, at really early stages, a resources library. So we've got where teams have made requests to us, what those requests were, and then what we did about it, or what advice we gave them, so that we've all got the same kind of information. We're all singing from the same hymn sheet when we go back to people if we get repeated requests. And what we're also doing, these things in green, are things that we could potentially translate into pages that could go on the website, so that there's a kind of living, breathing resource that people don't need to come to us to, they can just go and check there. And that's basically it. That's everything. Is that all right, Rich?
Great. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Just like back into the slide deck.
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry about that. Corinne.
Hello, I'm Corinne. Okay. And I'm talking about the website review that we've been doing. So there's kind of two parts of this, part of which is what Egla mentioned about adding project pages, but starting off just with the kind of review of the stuff that we've got already. So we know from feedback that our user researcher Linda did, which you can kind of see in the background here, that people kind of said the website wasn't that easy to use, and we know that just from the number to the kind of questions that we get about basic information that should be quite clear on the website. And so I've been doing, where is it? Oh, you have to go with this. Starting a content audit, which Rich has been helping out with a lot, doing just starting off by listing all of the stuff that we have on the website, and then it goes into Google Analytics, which is just pulled from Google Analytics and will now update automatically. That's all Rich is doing, very clever. And then I'm now going through and adding comments, which are also going to be opened up to the rest of the team, and particularly like Ben, I know, has some experience in this sort of thing. And just flagging, is it relevant, is it up to date, is it clear, and comments and what our next steps are going to be. So there's a couple of priorities, which are the training page and the about page at the moment. And the other thing was adding product pages. So I've done a couple of tries of that. The first version was based on a form that we already had in our WordPress. Ah, okay.
Sorry.
Not logged in. That's.
I can do it quickly.
Yeah,
It'll
that'd
take
be right.
2 seconds.
I'll just. Thank you. So the first one is based on a form that we already had that was kind of, I think, cooked up based on just what we expected that we might need. So you'll see that there's a couple of bits that don't actually make that much sense. So even though,
My password in the username field, which is always my biggest fear when I do this in front of people.
there's a lot of pressure and you're handling it very
Yeah.
well.
Thank you.
Hooray. Yay. Thank you, Rich. Do I get extra time? So, yeah, it comes up with, we maybe weren't expecting Worcestershire to have 14 partners. So now this looks like that, and there's no way of breaking that up. If I go into this one, I did slightly different versions for all of them, but I'll just show you one. It does have this nice little discovery tag, and then it has this box which you can't do any paragraph breaks in. We made some videos to go on here, and then you have these random boxes: background and user needs, technical information, and I'm sure there is a way to change that, but the titles are a bit random. So the feedback, I shared that with the team, and the feedback was it would be better just to do it like like this, just as a page that you click out to. This is sort of based on a page on Digital Land, the prototypes page, where you have the
Oh, big mistake.
and then you click through, and hopefully this is one with a video. Oh, it's not. Yeah, the layout this way is just a lot clearer, basically. Which one does have video? This one. It's got a really long title, but there'll be some more. This will also be sent around for feedback, and bye.
Great, thank you, Karen.
She's like, "Go."
Thank you.
Hi everyone. So I'm Ben Cheatham. I've just joined as the technical lead, technical architect, as is there. So I've only been in like 3 weeks. So it's still early days, just trying to work out where the toilets are, let alone do some work. And I've got Becky with me, who's a service designer. So we're 2/3 of the sort of service design team within the collaboration. We've got a user researcher as well. So just got a quick update of what we've been up to. So one of the big things the team's been working on last year was obviously the fund. So Linda has been, the user research has been going through or done some interviews with people that applied, started to map out pain points and things that have been useful along the way on the wall to start, to make sure that the fund next time around works better. And get some other insights and things to see what we've learned. So Becky, you want to talk a bit about that? So shall I drive and you?
Yeah, okay. So yeah, just pulled out a few kind of key pain points from that, I should say. So we've been like trying to map in the open those insights. Going forward, it'll be the collaboration team who are working with our projects who will kind of be our kind of like agent user researchers out there in the field. So we're working really closely with them, creating a space to map that, and then perhaps also a digital space like the spreadsheet like Sam's using as well. So yeah, kind of key pain points. Oh, sure, yeah. So yeah, kind of 3 key insights so far, really. That this is kind of like looking at motivations for the fund. So we found there's a bit of conflict at the beginning of, are people just applying for the money? Do they really get kind of the longer term vision of the fund? Especially with getting senior management to sign off the declaration. Secondly, there's always been kind of this issue of time with every point of the fund. So when people are getting this declaration signed off, submitting their expression of interest, and also then putting their application in, and now looking to actually do the project, this has always been like this kind of anxiety: are we going to be able to produce something of quality, something useful, and learn from it? And then that kind of feeds into like, how can we support them? What is our support role? So this quote is taken from someone who's, they're kind of great, we've got funding, but they're like, how do we do this? They're quite new to the whole process of working agile and working collaboratively. So some real challenges there. And I guess the design challenge is, how do we support that going forward? I just put this one in as well because we've done some like zoomed in user research as well, which is looking at our kickoff event, how that ran in the day. So how we can like redesign kind of quite focused touch points with our funded projects. And then taking a step back as well. So we've got our funded projects, and we'll hopefully have, second round of funding, potentially third. How can we improve that? But then also in the long run, how do we make this kind of collaborative form of working across local governments sustainable? So this is just some kind of quick sketches of looking at kind of more of a system overview and how this might evolve into the future. What touch points might we have to add in, which segues into Ben's going to just touch on.
I'll do. We've got a few seconds. So we've got. Yeah, sorry. So we've got 3 sort of kind of bigger questions that we want to look at, in the, around collaboration. So actually, some of the seeds of what we think of the seeds of collaboration have been around for a while. So like code being shared on GitHub, blogging and stuff, and collaboration is still not really kicked off. So trying to dig into a bit more about what the impact of that is. And then conscious of time, so I'm just talk about pipeline quickly. So this is something that was first started in 2014 by Local Gov Digital. Last year, Hackney took this on. And it's basically a place for councils to come and share projects that they're working on, the basis that if you can make it easier to know what's going on in the sector, then people can find a place to get in contact and collaborate. The start of end of last week, we put a digital outcomes and specialist bid up to find a partner to help us prototype and take this on a bit further, do some more research, build a new prototype, and make some general improvements. So that closes on the 8th of February, and we'll be looking for feedback from people across the sector to help take this to the next stage. And that's us.
Nice.
I'm conscious of time, so this is more of a tell rather than a show and tell, because the thing I'm talking about hasn't actually happened yet. So on the 12th of February, we have a network discovery workshop with a very select number of chief digital officers or CIOs or CTOs from across the UK. We're co-hosting with Bloomberg in their London office, and it's also in association with Soccerteam. So we're trying to understand the differences and similarities between different roles in this area. So although people might be CDOs in one local authority or another, there may be differences between them that they haven't previously spoken about or don't have the network to talk about with others. Seeing what else is effective in this area as well, so that we'll identify those common challenges and opportunities to work together. So there's 10 CDOs from around the UK, and we also have Mikko Rasama, who is the CDO of Helsinki. He just is in Bloomberg that day, so he's going to come along and do a half-an-hour workshop, but also join in with our day. So watch this space; it's happening soon.
Nice. Thanks, James. All right. So next up is the digital Landhof of Show and Tell, which is, I think.
Okay, so I'll try not to speak too long, but this just set the scene about what digital land is. So the problem we're trying to solve is that people making decisions across the housing market, which is very broad. It goes from like communities planning, like where they're going to build houses, through to acquiring land, getting your design, getting planning permission, getting funding, promotion, which is a thing I didn't know about until 2 weeks ago, big thing. And then there's lots of stuff like aftercare, about EPC certificates, for example, aftercare, or monitoring, like how many houses we're building. And to satisfy the needs in that space, which is the users, which are very disparate and wide, we expect an industry to erupt. What's the right move? What's the Zoopla for planning applications? What's City Mapper for buying a house? So that's a very nascent market. It doesn't really exist. And one of the reasons why it doesn't exist is because the raw ingredients they need, which is data, doesn't exist. Right? So we started thinking we could get some data polished up and make it available to them. But as we went on, we realized the barriers to that were really hard. And most of that data is buried inside local authorities or local planning authorities. They, by and large, don't, they've got to go over a hump. They've got to make the data available to the people. But actually, why should they do that? All they see is risk and no benefit. So we're working with policy teams inside this building, and we're grabbing onto bits that are already in train. So there's a movement to create local data standard for local plans. There's one for brownfield sites. There's one for developer contributions, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And there's some other things coming up, like compulsory purchase orders and some stuff based on the Hackett review we were following Grenfell about making building regulations data available. We're working with those teams to try and help them have a good outcome from local authorities. We're not killing local authorities with new burdens. We're working with the grain, making data easy for them, showing them the value. And then as a result of that, we'll try and aggregate the data or show how to aggregate it and make it available to these new people. So we might have to do a bit of, we're working with people outside the building like PlanX and other people to show them how, once we've made the data available, how easy and useful it is. Also, there's like feedback. There's 3 kinds of feedback. First one is, what should we work on? What data do you need? Second one thing is, when we decide to work on some data, how should that data look? What should it contain? And then the third thing is, when you've got some data, and this is one of the biggest obstacles, is people are scared of feedback on the data because they know that's not more work. So I'm going to hand over to the rest of the team because there's other things to show. We'll cover most of these areas as we go on. So who's next?
Press the button and find out.
Oh, press the button. No, I'm allowed.
Yeah,
I'm empowered. Developer contributions.
Cool. Okay, yeah, so one of the projects that that Paul referred to is developer contributions. So we've been working with Chris over there, one of our policy colleagues. So we're working on developer contributions for the past couple of months now. And we're at a point where we've got a data format, data standard we've proposed, we think will help answer the questions that currently can't be asked. And there's a public consultation that's happening around that and some of the broader policy changes at the moment. But we've, in the last couple of days, we've run a couple of workshops with local authorities. We did one in London on Monday, one in Leeds yesterday. It feels like a long time ago now. And we've got one coming up in Birmingham on Friday. So far, between the two workshops, London and Leeds, we've had about 40, 45 local authorities represented. There's another 20 to 25 on Friday. So I'm not actually going to talk about what we've learned from the workshops, partly because as a team, we need to kind of sit down and analyze that. And I don't want to kind of influence any kind of bias by saying things up the front here without giving it any thought. Also, if anyone is attending the session on Friday in Birmingham, I don't want to bias their opinion coming into that workshop. We want to hear if they're going to be saying the same kind of things. But yeah, I mean, what I will say is, I mean, the two workshops so far have been absolutely fantastic. We've learned a whole bunch of things. There's things that have kind of confirmed some of our assumptions about what we've designed. There's definitely some things that we need to take away and think about how we can make those better. But really what we use the workshops as an opportunity is to have kind of a very open and kind of frank conversation about what we're proposing and how does it actually work with local authorities who are dealing with this on the ground on a day-to-day kind of working basis. So Chris ran through kind of the broader policy changes and the implications of those, how it's going to make hopefully things better in a number of cases. I talked kind of broadly about what we're doing in terms of digital land services, and the things we're working on and the approach that we're taking. And then we kind of dived into the data format we proposed, some of the tools that we're prototyping at the moment. And we ran a number of exercises to see whether local authorities could take their existing data, using their existing tools, whatever third-party tools they're using or in-house tools, and actually provide the data to the format that we specified. And we learned a lot about that. We had quite a broad range of people come along. There's a number of people who kind of deal with hundreds of Section 106 agreements on a monthly basis. Some that deal with one or two every couple of months. So it was interesting to hear kind of differences between their approaches and how they've managed those currently. Yeah, we got the session on Birmingham. Yeah, oversubscribed. So if you're not attending, then that has oversubscribed. But we have the feedback form on the project page, and we want to kind of keep the conversation going. The public consultation actually ends today, but in terms of the data format and the tools, that's going to be an ongoing conversation, and we're going to keep kind of learning and iterating on that.
And people can discuss it at the local digital roadshows as well.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people can discuss it at local digital roadshows as well. Cool. Have I missed anything? So Paul and Hannah were also at the workshops, and Chris, anything you want to shout out?
No, I think I'll cover some more stuff. I'll link back to it.
Paul's going to link back to that on his bit. Cool. Excellent.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about,
Yep, you're good.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of designing the design process that we're creating to design data standards. And in terms of the work that I've been kind of carrying out, we've kind of set ourselves three kind of main questions. The first one, in terms of kind of understanding a broad kind of, what is the kind of policy design process? What's the policy process that is followed in terms of identifying also where the data need is kind of looked at as part of that process. So we're starting off from the assumption that there isn't a kind of A to B that's followed, so that's kind of understood, but we're trying to find out whether there are certain triggers in that policy development process that means that certain decisions about data are already implied, which means that we can't change things once those decisions are made, but also where we can kind of add the most value. So that's kind of very exploratory work, and Paul will talk a little bit about how we're kind of approaching that through some of the projects that we're working. Second question we've kind of been asking in terms of kind of speaking very broadly to teams, policy teams in this building and beyond, is where do those data conversations kind of, what do they consist of? Who has those conversations? Who are the people involved are there specialists? Is it about looking externally outside of the building in terms of commissioning data standards and so forth? So that we can also understand kind of where can we start to support those teams to understand, I guess, and kind of understand the difference between maybe their informational needs as opposed to their data needs, so that we can, again, support them through that process a little bit better. And then the last kind of question that I've kind of been working on is kind of trying to understand, well, what might be some of the design methods and tools that we can create and develop and design to actually support those teams through their journey. So again, it's very, very kind of discovery-based work, very exploratory at this stage to kind of understand what might be helpful across different contexts. And I think this is some of the work that Paul now is going to talk a little bit about in terms of how we're doing that through some of the projects that we're working through at the moment. Yeah.
Right. So my name is Paul. I'm the user researcher on the Digital Land team. And I'm going to cover a couple things real quickly. I don't have anything to show, so this is more about me just giving an update. The first thing is the sort of general approach in terms of user research and where it fits into the projects that we're working on. So we're looking at doing a few different types of things. And really one of the main agendas is to understand the differences in different types of user groups across these different projects. So whether we're talking about local government or policy teams, stakeholders as well as users, what are we trying to identify, what are we trying to understand, and where are there different needs within these different groups. So to do that, in relation to, for example, the sort of service design aspect, we're diving into specific projects, developer contributions, as well as potentially local plans. And the idea is to learn from those specific projects and then pull back and see where there's common areas. I think the other thing too is that we want to see where there's commonalities with the different types of user groups. So within local government, for example, the needs of a rural local government might be quite different than a larger two-tier local government. These are things that are already coming up in some of the workshops that we've done. And I think at this point, we're still trying to identify who we want to speak to. And particularly in terms of local plans, working with the data project team as far as what their needs are, and then who we can come to work with to answer their questions. The first thing is to understand what those questions are and what the relevance is. So this is sort of an ongoing thing, and I think we're going to be probably reaching out to a number of teams within the organization, different directorates as well, so planning and housing, possibly analytics, and maybe some other parts of the organization. And then as we move forward on these individual projects, we can flesh out how there's potentially similarities in sort of a design process, the work that Helena is covering. So I don't have a lot to say as far as what we're uncovering at the moment, but we intend to be sort of sharing what we're learning as we go, and we'll see what happens. And you'll probably be hearing from us quite a bit as well. So if anyone has events coming up working with local government, or someone's hearing about something internally where there's interest in local plans, we want to gather that information as well. And that's it. Right. Thanks.
Thanks. Who's next? Oh.
Is it down?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the delivery manager on the single register of planning, aka Central Index of Planning Permissions discovery work. I'm from, and this is Mike, my colleague there. I'm from By Society, and we're a not-for-profit organization, and we provide technology, research, and data to help people be active citizens. We work with digital technologies to lower the barriers to citizen engagement with their government. We work in 3 areas: community, transparency, and democracy. And our collaboration with the Digital Land team is part of our community work. The team we have working on this is
Mike, our user research consultant. We have Zarino, who's on the live stream, our designer and user researcher. Me, I'm the delivery manager. We have Matthew, who's our tech and product owner. And then we have Mark, who's over there, who's our chief executive and team sponsor. And I'll hand you over to Mike, who will talk you through some of our findings so far.
Thanks, Ellie. So we're looking into all of this planning applications data, and I've been deep in interviews for the last couple of 2 weeks, spoken to 15 people so far, and generally feeling kind of overwhelmed by the complexity of everything that I've been finding out. I came up for air yesterday to put this together. We've been trying to understand something about the fundamentals of what we're looking at. So when we're talking about planning applications, what are we talking about? How does it all fit together? Then what do the users who want to consume this data, what do they need from it? And then also, what are the systems that are orchestrating this data? What are their capabilities and what can they actually provide? And to help us make sense of this, I've been trying to think through a sort of a model of the main building blocks and how they fit together. And this is going to change, I'm sure, but this is how I'm thinking about it at the moment. So you've got a site in the middle, and there's some development planned on it. That leads to a planning application, and sometimes it can be one, sometimes it can be many, because you can have an outline followed by 1 or 2 full applications. If it's approved, then it might be approved with conditions and obligations. So the developer has to satisfy certain conditions before they can do it, or else they're building it. Those conditions affect what the development actually is, and they require more submissions. And so the things in blue here, these bits and these bits, are all different submissions that go through the planning portal and appear on planning websites. And they all concern the same development on the same site, but they all come through the system as separate things. And one of the things that I've realized is a big issue in this, I'm going to talk through some of the themes that we're getting from the research, is how do you link all of this stuff together? Because from the developer's point of view and from the people who are following all of this, the thing that really matters is the site and the development. But the way the systems all model it is the application and the submissions. And tying them together isn't totally straightforward, because you can rely on UPRNs for most things, because if it's on a plot of land and the plot of land isn't changing and the property isn't changing, the UPRN can kind of be relied on to tie it all together. The UPRN is the unique property reference number for people for the uninitiated. But if it's a really big development and it's 500 dwellings and it starts off with like a gas storage place and it converts into 500 houses, the UPRNs change, and then subsequent submissions might have different UPRNs, and tying it together isn't always automatically possible. So how do you do it? Maybe you can rely on polygon data, but that isn't always available, and it's not necessarily licensed in the way that you might want it to be. So the development and the site are like a central organizing concept, but there's a fundamental problem, which is that they are central concepts, but they're not related. They're not modeled in the data or the systems. So they organize everything. This is the way that people think about it as a site with a development project, but they're not reflected in the systems. So that also relates to this question, which is, how do you check the permissions being given? How do you check on progress? How do you check whether it's started, whether it's completed? And that data isn't really being collected, as far as I can tell. There's no consistent way in which it's being collected. So some local authorities do collect it. So Hampshire County Council, who we're going to talk to about it on Thursday, they collect it and they use it to underpin all their population forecasts and their service modelling. But there are lots of other people who are looking at how can we do this in other ways, so that we don't have to send people around on scooters and cars to look at sites and count curtains in windows. And so they're looking at things like computer vision. Can we use aerial photography to automatically see that hoardings have gone up? Can we look at skip hires? Can we use building control data to know that things are finished? Can we use EPCs? But there's lots of things that people are looking at, but there's no definitive, and this is the best way of doing it, and this data set's going to work. So this is all experiments and thoughts, but nothing concrete and practical at the moment. Another question that we're thinking about is, how do you get more structured data flowing through the system in the first place? Because one of the problems here is that you get to the end of the process, or the application on the local authority systems, and there's loads of PDFs with lots of data, but you have to sort of churn through that and process it to turn it into actually useful data. So it's lacking in structure, and it's also messy. So to give an example, this is something from an application form, and they put in the number of houses that they're building, so it's 6 4-bedroom or more houses. And I was under the impression until this morning that this was just recorded in this fashion and available on PDFs on the council website that then people have to go through if they want this information. But actually, the planning portal is capturing this as structured data and is sending it through in XML in structured format. But the planning systems aren't necessarily putting that in a structured format, and they're certainly not passing it on in a structured format. So another example is that those conditions I was talking about earlier. So before you can start, prior to first occupation, external lighting shall be installed in accordance with blah, 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 and you shall submit details of it. This is a condition that's been put on it, and a subsequent submission will deal with that condition. But this is where it exists. It exists in this paragraph in this document. It doesn't exist as structured data. And this could be useful information, because if you knew that someone had submitted the external lighting plan, then it might tell you something about where the development is up to. But it's not structured. So there's lots of problems with getting that structured data coming through. And maybe if we can make changes at the start of the process, more structured data could flow through all the way to the end. Then this is from a guy called Adrian Short, who runs UK Planning Scrapers, which is an open repository on GitHub. He is scraping a load of stuff, and he said that he quite liked his scrapers to conform to get the decision field. So has an application been approved or refused or withdrawn, and sort of get all the different data from across London and make it conform to a single standard. And he did an analysis on 5,000 applications from London and found that there are 190 different codes for these 8 things. So just to give you an example, this is the number of ways that you can say granted on a planning application. And so at some point, if you want good data at the end, someone has to spend the time going through and mapping all of these. And it's either the individual local authorities mapping it to a common standard, or it's taking it from local authorities and cleaning it up before it's then published on to other people. So those are a handful of kind of early findings from the stuff that we've been doing so far. Yeah.
Could you tell us how you have or will or don't need to drawn some of the previous precedents from like Hackney and Southwark and which cities were involved as well?
Sure. So we started our research with conversations with LGA and GLA, because LGA did some work on this about 3 or 4 years ago, and their schema is being used by a lot of authorities who are publishing data. We've spoken to the GLA because they're doing a very similar project. We haven't spoken to Southwark yet, but we're hoping to. So we're trying to leverage the experience that already exists out there. We've been reading the Future Cities work, but I haven't yet managed to speak to them, but hopefully will. Because there's a lot of stuff that's already happened on this. And I think in particular the LGA work from 4 or 5 years ago, they defined a schema, and they got quite a few local authorities, probably somewhere between 50 and 100 publishing data against it. And some local authorities, like in Surrey, so we spoke to Surrey because they have the Surrey Planning Hub that is still publishing live data according to the LGA schema, and they're a really interesting success story.
No shortage of standards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the problem really, and one of the things that we're going to address as well, is there's been lots of initiatives and people have made inroads, but it hasn't ever scaled up to the whole country. So why is it not? And what can MHCLG do to try and help it scale up to the whole country?
Okay, great. Thank you. Is this you guys again, or is this?
Did you put the slide? No, it is. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Rebecca. I have been so good at monitoring time, waving the timer in everybody's face at the back, that I now have more time than I thought. But yeah, I just wanted to quickly touch upon a bit about our roadmap for Q4 and a bit about how we work. So what we're trying to achieve in Q4 is really based around the things that the team talked about before. So the local plans project, we are kind of doing a discovery alpha over Q4 and into Q1. And so much of the stuff in our roadmap will come from the workshops that are happening, the 3 developer contributions workshops, and we are planning 2 local plans workshops, and through that research that will help us prioritize. But yeah, a bit about how we work. We very much embrace the principles of One Team Gov. We work in a very open and positive way, very collaborative. but beyond kind of us as human beings and MHCLG digital, the digital and services team also have a set of principles. So we're open by default, start small and build up, go with the grain, inclusive when designing, ask questions, test answers, continuous feedback and iteration, work with real data and real users, and make data available where it's maintained. So yeah, I guess the two services that we're kind of focusing on building, one to help policy teams in this building have better outcomes with data, and one to help the people who make and maintain the data do that in a way that is not just not an extra burden, but also adds value to them. Yeah, we really want to, interact with our users and kind of work in that collaborative way, which might be slightly different to how other teams have approached this in the past. I don't know. But as the digital and services team in MHCLG, we are very open. So we have, ways for you to get in touch with us. And if anybody can share real data with us, for example, so that we test our prototypes, that's amazing. And yeah, if you want to be involved in the work that we're doing, you have ways to get in touch with us. Yes.
Just go with the grain.
Go with the grain. So we're not trying to do something completely different to how it happens at the moment. If something's already happening and it's kind of working, and we can kind of go with that and make it happen in a better way, but still get the better outcome that we want, then we would choose that option over another option which is really disruptive. Yeah, absolutely. And so I should say as well, for our Q4 roadmap, some of the things that have been slightly disparate we're bringing together. So something called the Planning Innovation Network was one round of funding for planning projects, and the local digital collaboration unit have just funded a couple of other planning projects, and we're kind of looking at planning as a portfolio and kind of tying those things together, all in the spirit of the declaration, and how we can make things that are reusable and work for more than kind of beyond those funding projects. So yeah, and I guess that's it. But we have some time for questions. We've got 3 minutes if anybody would like to ask any questions.
I've got a question for the local digital fund people. So one of your things, the chat, I think it was a chatbot, had 14 or 15 different collaborators. That's tricky. And would it be better to have lots of small things which you can learn from and then sort of work out, what's the overall thing? Well, I mean, one thing where everybody's like, because, union of everything, either everybody would be equally disappointed or everybody would be, doing something that's massive and not, they're the dangers. Getting to the small thing that everybody agrees on is really hard.
I mean, I might say to that all the projects are really different, so we're just watching how they get on and how they manage to negotiate that. I think and we would have encouraged every project to have a core team that is looking that, and we spent a bit of time, a chunk of time at the kickoff workshop to try to confirm that you don't need to boil the ocean. What you need to do is articulate something that you can deliver in the time allowed. And even if maybe you apply with a very ambitious global problem statement, like let's cut it down to teach us something that we can learn from in the next 3 months. So
that's a good answer, because I think that's what we've got, like a real mix of projects, different sign names. I guess you can learn loads from it. That's the value.
Yeah, it's kind of an uncomfortable situation, and the Egla, Adam, and Sam are at the cold face of it, in that we don't know exactly what we're going to produce at the end of it. We want to observe really actively for the next 3 months, give help where we can give help, but ultimately use this as the information base to come up with much more informed guidance about how you create a common thing. And I'm sure we'll be working a lot together with you on that, because you're learning loads yourselves, and find some projects that really show national promise. So we're kind of like a core behind you guys in identifying where we could really focus our.
You're ahead of us.
In some way, it's a competition now. But we're basically just trying to observe as much as possible this quarter, see what volume of collaborators makes for good, and and how you cut up a scope so that it is,
Yeah.
you know, this, I'm getting windy now.
I think small things, lots of experiments to sort of find out what's, where's the danger of a big project. Sometimes you end up with something that is like one thing that.
So we looked at each project has the common bit team, and it's just the collaborators are the people informing priorities, but it has to be owned by, the collaborative product owner and the collaborative product team.
I think
And we'll see how they get
on that stuff, and I think the list of all of the collaborators, they'd actually put didn't they? Whereas actually there is a core team of 3 local authorities working on it.
That's good.
So it looks slightly.
Although chatbots are, how are they?
Was it chatbots that was the one?
They're really big. They're like 13 or so.
The chatbots one in the EOI phase, there was 3 or 4 different chatbots, and out of that, I think it was Newcastle and someone else. And they basically were so far ahead of Oxford that they didn't want to collaborate on the Oxford project because they thought they were further ahead. So you kind of, not only we're learning about the projects, we're learning about how these local authorities will collaborate together.
Yeah, yes, it's a really good, good sort of experiment in this whole thing, which is great.
Wrapping up, Paul. So, given that it's 2 o'clock,
any online questions?
Pardon? There isn't any online questions. Yeah, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to all the speakers. We really appreciate your input. Thank you to everyone who came, asked questions, and observed and listened. I'm really pleased about you. Thanks very much.
And thanks to Rich and Becca for sorting it all out.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks very much, guys on stream. We're gonna end there. I'm gonna leave an email address if you have any feedback. Please give us feedback because doing this remotely is hard, and fixing it is something in our agenda.
Feedback on Slack.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if we've capacity to do email feedback. Feedback in the Slack channel. We'll put the link to the Slack channel in there.
Sounds good. All right. Bye, folks.